Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and just do me a favor and ignore the fact that the background is different. I've been recording and working out of a different space lately, so I apologize for the uploads being weird lately, as well as the background being different in potentially the next couple of videos, so just do your best to ignore that. But today I wanted to come out with a video just talking about my guy, Luka Doncic. Now, when I say my guy, I'm not going to pretend like I'm the only person that was ever on the Luka Doncic bandwagon before the season, but if you do go back and look at any of my draft content or look back at any of my live streams back before the NBA draft, I have always been Team Luka and Jaren Jackson Jr. if you want to throw that in there as well. And before you say it, yes, I understand that we're, a quarter of the way through the NBA season. Luka hasn't even played 25 games yet in the NBA, but I personally think that every now and then we come across players that even so early into their careers, you can just see it and it's not unwarranted to jump all over their case as one of the next future stars of the league, and I think Luka Doncic is one of those guys. As I said, I've been Team Luka for a while, but even I did not expect him to be this good this early. I thought he would put up good statistics, but I didn't think he would take over Dallas as his team so quickly, and I also didn't think he would be putting them in a winning position this early either. Now, I can already feel myself getting ahead of myself and running over on some points I'm going to get to later, so let's just go ahead and get started with the video. First of all, let's just start with the numbers. Statistically, you can see that Doncic is having a great rookie year, averaging 18, 6, and 4, and I know a lot of people are surprised to see that, but one thing I don't really see a lot of people talking about is the possibility for Luka Doncic to be named an All-Star in his first season, and with these averages, I think that's a realistic possibility. As you can see, that's a pretty uncommon feat for a player to be named an All-Star in their first season, but that just goes along with my theory that Luka Doncic is an uncommon player. Pulling the stats back up now, if you just go with that 18, 6, and 4 line, there are 9 players in the NBA currently putting up that stat line as of this video. 7 of them were All-Stars last season, one of them is Blake Griffin, and the other is Luka Doncic. You can say what you want about Griffin, and maybe you have some varying opinions of the players on this list, but for Doncic to be keeping this kind of statistical company as a rookie, and a young rookie at that, is simply an incredible accomplishment, and again, kind of legitimizes the fact that he might be an All-Star this season. Even if you go back to last year, players that posted this kind of stat line for the entire season, most of them were named All-Stars as well, with the notable one that didn't being Nikola Jokic, who's going to be an All-Star this year. And then if you extend that statistical criteria even further to players that are averaging 18, 6, and 4, as well as making 2 threes a game, Luka is one of 5 players doing that to this point in the season. The others being LeBron James, Victor Oladipo, Paul George, and once again, Blake Griffin. You could make the case that every single player on that list other than Luka would make an All-NBA team if the season ended right now, so why can't Luka be an All-Star with those numbers? And one more thing before I stop talking about the stats and his All-Star candidacy, when you put all of those things together that I just mentioned about the 18, 6, and 4 stat line, and then you also account for his age, there has never been a player in NBA history to average this stat line as a teenager. As you can see, Magic Johnson and LeBron James put up these numbers in their age 20 seasons, but Doncic doesn't turn 20 until the end of February, which I realize is a small detail, but is still impressive nonetheless for him to be the only player that has ever accomplished that feat, at least at this point in the season. And now moving on from the numbers and onto some things that you kind of have to actually watch him play to understand and not just look at the numbers to see why he is one of the future stars of the league. The first of which being that he's essentially perfect for this era of NBA basketball that we're currently in. He's one of those positionless players with the exception of the 5 spot. He can play in any spot from 1 through 4 and can also play in a variety of roles, which makes it pretty easy to build a team around him. He can be the primary ball handler in lineups, he can play off the ball and come off screens and work with his shooting ability, he can be strictly a playmaker, he can be anything you really want him to be, 1 through 4, although the 4 is still a question mark depending on how you're running your offense. I know that there's some conversations among Mavs fans about how Luka fits with Dennis Smith Jr., or more accurately, probably the other way around, but to me, that's more of a DSJ problem as much as I love him as a former NC State player than it is a Luka problem. Because the issue there is more so that Dennis needs the ball to be effective, whereas Luka can be effective on or off the ball, although preferably for me, I'd like to have him on it rather than off. But the point that I'm making is that moving forward for Dallas, or whatever team Luka ends up playing for down the road, you can bring in any number of free agents, make any number of trades, and essentially, if you're building it around Luka first, any piece you bring in can work, because even with a guy like Dennis Smith Jr. or any other perimeter player that can't shoot that well, they can still play with Doncic. He can play off the ball, he can shoot, he can space the floor, and then work and attack off of closeouts, even though, again, my preference would be for him to be the primary playmaker 90% of the time. And that's a really big deal in the modern NBA, where everybody's trying to create super teams. You've got to have players that can kind of fit and mesh with any group. Because as we've seen in the past, it isn't enough to just have 3 or 4 or 5 really big name star players. They have to mesh well together to really maximize their super team potential. Now, I'm not saying that Dallas is going to be building a super team anytime soon, although I might make a video about that because I'm thinking about doing that for the Suns with Devin Booker's recent comments. But anyway, my point is that he is the perfect player for the modern NBA in terms of building a team around him, or being a part of what you're trying to build around another player. And going along with that point, and something that I think is equally important, Luka Doncic can impact the game and improve your team's chances of winning even without scoring the basketball. He can be the best player on the floor even if he doesn't have a great shooting or scoring night. He just does so many things in terms of applying pressure to the defense, getting in the lane, kicking it out to open shooters, and just making plays that he doesn't have to be the primary scorer on a given night to help your team win, which again is extremely important. And if you think about it, there's really only a handful of guys around the league that aren't point guards that can really impact the game that way. And off the top of my head, I'm thinking about LeBron, potentially Giannis, potentially Ben Simmons, and guys like Nikola Jokic. And what that means is as Doncic gets more and more comfortable in the NBA, you're going to see more and more stretches from the Mavericks like they've had in their last 10 games, in which they've gone 8-2. And if the playoffs ended right now, as of this video, the Dallas Mavericks would be in the Western Conference playoffs. And I think that right there might be the most surprising impact of Luka Doncic so far in his career, to me at least, is I expected him to put up fairly good stats and be impressive, but I didn't know how good Dallas would be. I thought they could potentially be a fringe playoff team, but they've put it together pretty quickly early in the season, and I really wasn't expecting it to happen this early. Granted, they did not have a great start to the season, and really the only reason they're in playoff position is because of this last 10-game stretch, but it's still something to account for. And again, all of these things are so much more impressive when you consider how young he is. He doesn't even turn 20 until the end of February, and in my opinion, if I'm starting a franchise right now, and I'm only allowed to start it with players that have not made an all-star team yet, I'm going to pick Luka Doncic, even though I understand there's all the caveats about him not being very far into his NBA career. We're barely 20 games in, but he is still my pick. Out of any player that hasn't made an all-star team in the league, I'm picking Luka Doncic to start my team for all the reasons I've talked about in this video. And yes, that list includes Ben Simmons. And side note on Simmons, yes, he's great, but he just flat out refuses to shoot the basketball. And I don't know if that's because he refuses to work on it or he's just not confident enough in it in game yet. But Luka has such a big edge over him in that category, along with all the other things I've already talked about, that I'm picking Luka instead of Ben Simmons. Me praising Luka is not meant to trash guys like DeAndre Ayton or Marvin Bagley or Trae Young. I just think it's incredible how good Doncic has been to begin the season. Ayton's still having a very good start to his career. Trae Young is having a predictably inefficient year, and Bagley looks like a questionable fit in Sacramento, but they've still been good for rookies. It's just Doncic has been on a completely different level. So again, if I'm going to start a team right now with a player that has not made an all-star team, it's going to be Luka Doncic. Now, to be clear, if we're picking under 25 players, it's still going to be Giannis. But among players that have made an all-star team, it's going to be Luka, although as I mentioned in the beginning, he might not be without an all-star selection for very much longer. And that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, I apologize for the background being different. If the lighting is a little weird, if the audio is a little weird, I apologize for that. I'm doing my best with what I have right now. Things have been a little bit weird working out of this space, but I hope to be back in my regular space soon, and I appreciate all of you guys that continue to come back and comment on every video and view every video. It's just really nice to have that support and being able to put out videos as often as I do. So thank you guys for that. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.